It's his name, it's his policy, it's his failure. It's his willingness to ignore U.S. law and international humanitarian law.
Those against?
And to allow Israel to continue a genocide. It's the president's policy, the buck stops with him, and it's going to be his legacy that's tarnished because of it. My name is Tariq Habash. I worked at the U.S. Department of Education as a political appointee and policy advisor from February 2nd, 2021 until January 3rd, 2024, and I resigned because of President Biden's policies that dehumanize Palestinians and continued to unconditionally support the violence that Israel was bringing upon Palestinian civilians. I've worked on education policy that affects colleges and universities, higher education affordability issues, racial equity issues for the last decade. I would write policy recommendations for Hill offices, and I worked for a number of different organizations doing advocacy and research. When Joe Biden won the election, they came knocking on my door. I think by and large, when people look at Joe Biden's track record on domestic issues, I think education is near the top of the success.
What you see behind me here is a mass grave that is being dug in Khan Yunis, the southern Gaza Strip, for 110 Palestinians who have been killed in Israeli attacks.
You know, every single day is really difficult just to know that your people, your family, descendants that you've never met are being massacred or being starved, and there's nothing that you can do about it. My public resignation didn't actually hit until January. I had a lot of criticism from even Arabs and Palestinians saying, oh wow, even the Palestinian guy, it took 3 months for him to get the courage to leave. Like, I care about the work that we're doing on student debt. I want to provide better opportunities for students and student loan borrowers and families who are just trying to make ends meet and trying to make their futures a little bit brighter. And I can't do that knowing that my people are being bombed incessantly and unconditionally. I think there are some people who truly believe that without them in government, the country would be a worse place. The idea that individuals can change policy and hold people accountable inherently isn't naive. I do think that there's value in that, but I think that circumstances dictate, you know, what comes next. And I think what we've seen is that the people who are making the decisions, they're not listening to the subject matter experts at the State Department who are working on human rights issues, who are working on atrocity prevention. They're not listening to the weapons transfer people who know the laws that should apply that they are purposefully ignoring.
Complicity with genocide is a crime on its own under the Genocide Convention.
They don't listen to the countless human rights organizations and NGOs that have been very clear that what is happening is essentially a genocide or is a genocide. So I think it comes to a point where, yeah, it does become naive. It's no secret as a Palestinian American that Joe Biden is a self-identified Zionist, that he believes in the state of Israel and believes that it is the only way to keep Jewish people around the world safe.
Folks, were there no Israel, there wouldn't be a Jew in the world who was safe. Were there no Israel.
When you live in the most diverse country in the world that also is home to more Jewish people than any other country, and you're telling people as the head of that country that you can't keep Jewish Americans safe, like, that's problematic for a lot of different reasons. And for me, I think between like the claims that he saw beheaded babies to claiming that there are like Hamas bases in a Shifa hospital, like there's so many different moments where I just imagined like this is the time when it's gonna stop. But one by one, every single school, one by one, every single university, the continued starvation, the incursion on Rafah, like it never ended. And then you thought, okay, well, there's a massacre here that happened at this school. There's a massacre because of the flour.
Hundreds of starving Palestinians had gathered to collect food aid when they were attacked.
There's a massacre of the humanitarian aid workers that are mostly from Western countries.
Learning new details today about the 7 aid workers from World Central Kitchen who were killed by Israel's military in Gaza.
One of these is going to trigger enough disdain and frustration with Israel's very obvious goal to completely destroy Palestinian life that he's going to draw a line, and he just never did. Because I think the president's an ideologue, and I think that he's racist against Palestinians. I mean, we know that there's a very small inner circle of people that are running the policy. We know that Jake Sullivan's fingerprints are on it. We know Brett McGurk's fingerprints are on it. We know Antony Blinken's fingerprints are on it, but it's the president that makes the calls. And the only time that we really saw progress, particularly on the return of Israeli hostages, was when there was a ceasefire, when there was a diplomatic solution. That's when you actually saw progress. It had nothing to do with the military attacks, and if anything, the military attacks were killing countless civilians, but also Israeli hostages were getting killed. You're just like, how is nothing getting through, and how is no one realizing what is very obvious and evident to so many Americans at this point? I think one of the earliest moments where I realized what this administration was capable of in terms of its willingness to dehumanize Palestinians and to accept what happens to Palestinians was the response to Israel's assassination of Abu Akleh.
Thousands came to say their goodbyes. Many are feeling they knew Shireen personally. That's how much she connected with her audience.
Seeing both the Israeli response to obfuscating what actually happened in the immediate aftermath, but also seeing this administration's willingness to just say, we have to wait and see. I think every single attack against Palestinians in Gaza, against journalists, against humanitarian aid workers, against doctors and nurses, was predicated on the fact that we were willing to literally turn a blind eye to the assassination of a Palestinian American journalist, someone who is widely respected in the industry for decades. I think the risk to American democracy are really significant. I think that's extremely dangerous for our institutions. I think it's extremely dangerous that we have political officials and elected officials that are willing to ignore U.S. law when it comes to our distribution of weapons and arms. The campus repression of student speech, of student activism and organizing protests, and even what is taught in the classroom has existential risks to our higher education institutions. I think it sets a really bad precedent for Americans who, I think, want to believe in our institutions. I want to be hopeful. I want to be hopeful that the end to this genocide and to the occupation and oppression of Palestinians is near. I don't have the answer, and unfortunately, it's our government that is the primary impediment to that happening. I just don't know. Every day is hard. It's